Welcome back to Second Take, where we talk about reclaiming your health, taking back your power, and rewriting your story. So, welcome back to this quick series. Hopefully, you're finding these videos to be just little tidbits that give you actionable items of ways that you can actually reclaim your own health and work on one at a time things that you can rectify in your own life and your lifestyle that will give you back power over your own health. Because really, at the end of the day, nobody can do that part for us. If we're living a lifestyle that doesn't allow for health, then we have no choice but to be unhealthy. There's not a pill in the world that is going to make you better if you're living a lifestyle that is not conducive to health. So I encourage you to take the time to watch the videos that you may feel are important for you in your own life, and then to start with the small wins. Start with small, actionable items that can help you rebuild your health from the ground up. And today we're going to talk about one of the main ways to do that, and that's food. So I talked a little bit earlier in a previous video about how my own family was relying a lot on fast food or restaurants because we weren't around very often and didn't have the time to cook. We didn't, when my kids were young, I cooked every night. And of course, I didn't have the money either as a single parent to take them out. So I always cooked dinner, but those dinners that I cooked weren't exactly the healthiest because I didn't know any better. I grew up in I was born in 73. So I grew up in the late 70s and 80s, which was our fat-free craze, right? Everything was about making sure that you didn't have too much fat in your diet. And that was definitely the household that I grew up in. So we never ate the skin on chicken. We never had anything but white breast meat in our chicken. We didn't eat steaks that had a lot of marbling or fat because that was not heart healthy. I ate Cheerios all the time as a breakfast cereal. That was the biggie for cereal in my household was Cheerios. And the fat-free milk, of course, was what went with it, skim milk instead of full fat milk. So that's how I grew up. And when my kids were young, I didn't really know any better. The only vegetables I really knew about, if it wasn't a salad, then it was corn or green beans. That was pretty much it. And potatoes. We ate a lot of potatoes. I'm half Irish, half Italian. So we had a lot of potatoes and a lot of pasta, and that was it growing up. And unfortunately, I was doing the same thing with my kids, going for the ease and convenience of fast to prepare foods. But they were typically homemade at that time when my kids were young. But when they got older and we were running in every direction to get everybody to their various activities, we really relied heavily on fast food. And unfortunately, in this country, our fast food and most of the food we can get at restaurants is laden with toxins, absolutely laden with toxins. So, if you have been following what's going on in our current media or what's being portrayed in the media about our food system, it's become an issue of late, and it's starting to become something that people talk about. But back when this was all happening, in the late 2010 to 2015 kind of area, there wasn't too much talked about the food and the toxicities in our food. So doing the research that I was doing and trying to understand what I needed to do to recover my own health, I started to understand a little bit more about how our food is grown in this country and the fact that much of our food system has been bastardized by the larger corporations. Their focus is on profit. Their focus is not on our health. And unfortunately, while trying to drive yield of crops and trying to increase profits, the health of our food has decreased so much so that anybody who's eating a standard American diet really has no chance but to be unhealthy. There's so much glyphosate in our food, which is known as Roundup, and that's a carcinogen. There's so much of that in our food that if we're not eating organic fruits and vegetables, we are consuming vast amounts of glyphosate, even if we wash our food. Now, if you're somebody who buys all organic produce, That can also be a problem, especially if you're not washing it before you consume it. Did you know that in a grocery store, I used to think that the sprayers that came down on the produce, that was all water to keep everything fresh. It's not water, they're chemicals. And those chemicals are being sprayed even on organics. So though your food may be organically grown, it is sprayed with chemicals when it's sitting in the grocery store. I didn't know that. I also wasn't somebody that read a label. At that time, at that point in time, I never read labels ever. It wasn't part of what I would do. I would go to the grocery store, grab the things that I needed, and leave, try and get the hell out of there as quickly as possible. I'm not a person that likes to shop. So in and out, whether it's a grocery store or a clothing store, I don't care. I just want out of there as quickly as possible. And reading in the labels of ingredients was not part of anything that I would do on the regular. But if you're not doing that today, then one of the things you'll find when you go to the grocery store, if you do happen to look at a label, is that most of the things you see are going to include bioengineered ingredients. What does that even mean? What is a bioengineered food ingredient? It means that it contains detectable modified genetic material that has been modified through certain lab techniques and cannot be found in nature. Okay? So if you're eating these genetically modified organisms or ingredients, the newsflash is your body does not recognize that as food. Your body sees it as a toxin because it's synthetic. It's not something that was on this earth in order for humans to consume. That's a problem. And it's one of the many problems that we see in our food industry, but it's one that causes extreme difficulty for our body. So, what do we do to fix it? Well, we start knocking out these food categories that really are not food. If you want to reclaim your health, it's almost impossible to do it if you're eating the standard American diet. It's almost impossible to do it if you're eating things that are not food. Now, I know that when it comes to our food system and when we talk about what we need to do to be healthy, I used to look at other people that were really conscious about what they ate and think that they were a little bit wacky, number one. Number two, I used to think there's no way I have that much time. I don't have the kind of time it takes to make sure that my diet is that clean. Number three, wow, that's got to taste like shit. I literally used to think this. And I found that the truth is that when you eat actual food, your body becomes so healthy that if you cheat and you eat one of those things that you used to eat all the time, the ramifications of that can be violent because it's not food and your body knows it's not food. So if you're not doing that yet, if you're not looking at ingredients, if you're not making it a point to eat the things that your body will find healthy, not the things that you think are tasty, then I encourage you to start reading those labels. There are some simple things like MSG. If you're still somebody that's eating food products that have MSG in them, MSG stands for monosodium glutamate, and it's a neurotoxin. That neurotoxin can cause headaches, vertigo, blurred vision, joint pain, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, ALS, and dementia. Those are all things that I sure as hell don't want to have in this lifetime or any other. So if you're still consuming MSG, understand that that is the ramification of that decision. It can literally cause those types of problems for you, for your children, and for anybody else that you're feeding food that has MSG in it. Now, if you try to get rid of MSG and you read all of the labels and you just try to not get anything that has MSG in it, you also need to understand that our FDA has allowed MSG to be listed not only as MSG on a food label, it can also be listed as hydrolyzed vegetable protein. That's MSG. It can be listed as autolyzed yeast, hydrolyzed yeast, soy extracts, and protein isolates and soy protein isolates. How can that MSG have all of those different names? Because they're trying to allow for it to be put into our food without us knowing it. So I hope that just that small example shows you that those two things, the GMO foods that have no basis in nature. They're not naturally made, and our body doesn't recognize them as food, along with MSG, which is actually a neurotoxin. Those two things alone can cause so many problems in our body. What if you can't afford all organic food? I know that right now cost is an issue for most of us, and we're already seeing astronomical food increases in price. So if that's the case for you, there is an app called the EWG Healthy Living app that is free. You can scan anything in the grocery store, anything, period. It actually does body products, household cleaning products, and all of that as well. But you can scan the product itself and it'll tell you how healthy or unhealthy that particular item is. Hugely helpful as you're trying to understand what's actually in your food. But the most important thing is to really read your ingredient list. And for me now, if that ingredient list has more than 4 or 5 ingredients, and if it's anything that I don't know and cannot pronounce, I'm not buying it. I don't care how good it looks. I don't care what it is. I'm not buying it because at the end of the day, my health is now more important. So I tend to shop the outside aisles in the food store. There is truth in the fact that the outside aisles have all the healthy food and the shit on the interior aisles is not really good for you. So if you focus on whole foods, natural foods, and foods that were on the earth as God or source or the universe intended for us to eat, that's going to be healthier for you than anything that comes out of a bag or a box or anything else. And for those of you who are gluten-free and think, oh, but I'm eating gluten-free products, know that gluten-free products are some of the worst out there because the gluten-free products have to add in a lot of sugar and other chemical alternatives to make the food actually taste good. So that's a problem. The same is true for fat-free or low fat. Anything that has low fat is going to have more sugar in it. And sugar is a massive issue for our body, not only for an issue for us as it pertains to potential diabetic diagnoses, but also just for the health of our body. And we'll get into that in a future session where we talk about the ability to utilize resources for our body and the sugar burner system versus the fat burning system that our body has by way of metabolizing food. We'll talk about that in future. But suffice it to say that if you can clean up your diet in such a way that you're eating healthy food, that is going to take you farther than anything else that you will do besides clean water. So clean water, clean food, those two things are absolutely huge for repairing the damage that's been done to our bodies over time when we didn't know these things. So another option for anybody who wants to eat organic but simply can't afford it, on the EWG Environmental Working Group website, ewg.com or .org, I believe it is, ewg.org. On that site, they actually have a Dirty Dozen and a Clean 15 every year that they publish. The Dirty Dozen is the top 12 produce foods that have the most toxins in them that year. And the Clean 15 are those that are the cleanest or that you can peel in such a way that they don't have those toxins, as many of those toxins that become eaten by that product. So least amount of pesticides and okay to buy conventional if absolutely necessary, if you're trying to cut down your food bill as much as possible. But the Dirty Dozen is literally the highest amounts of pesticides on that particular produce. So that is something that should not be eaten if it's not being eaten organic, because the detrimental effects of that particular food are going to be catastrophic for your body. Glyphosate has been proven in multiple studies to cause cancer. That's Roundup. It's being sprayed on our food. And many of our even cereals that we're feeding to our children have high levels of glyphosate. Hugely problematic for us. So if you're not looking at your food ingredient labels, that's something I really encourage you to do. It's a huge issue for us here in this country. And until we resolve the food system as a whole, we really need to be diligent at our level to make sure that we're not consuming these absolutely atrocious chemicals. Because when you are, there's no way that your body has a chance in being healthy. It's too toxic. It's important to understand, too, when we have those toxins introduced to our body, your body can only put toxins in three different areas, really. It can put them in your fat. It can sequester those toxic molecules in your fat so that it's not detrimental to your organs. It can sequester them in bone, and it can put it in your brain. Those aren't places that I want toxins. So I want to make sure that I'm eating as healthy a diet as possible so that my body is not having to sequester toxic ingredients. And I really encourage you to do the same. This is one small thing that you can do little by little to make sure that you are cleaning up your diet as much as possible and giving your body the resources it needs to heal itself, because it really can. When it comes down to the ability to heal, your body is a miraculous machine. And if you give it the resources it needs, it is able to heal pretty much anything. So, with that, I'll let you go on this episode. Remember, clean food is the key to health. So, I encourage you to really start reading those food labels, look at the ingredients, understand what they are. And if you don't understand what it is, don't buy it. It's not worth it. Remember, there's nobody coming to save you. You really need to be able to save yourself. And cleaning up your food is going to be able to allow you to do it. So I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of Second Take. And I hope you have a great day. Take care. Bye-bye.